Most common command in the Bible is do not be afraid. 300 or 400 times, depending on translation. Do not be afraid. Do not be terrified. Do not be dismayed. Do not be discouraged. Have courage. All that. And then Paul said, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, sound mind. So if God is not the author of fear, if fear doesn't come from God, where does fear come from?
Yeah.
100% from the enemy.
Yeah.
So he wants to steal, kill, and destroy your purpose, your confidence, and taking new ground by leaving you in the land of the familiar. It's what he did to the Israelites. It's one of the oldest strategies in the game. Courage and boldness, it's not a feeling. It shouldn't be. It's a spiritual decision. I am not going back. I am not turning around. I am not clinging to what's comfortable. I will not make this my identity.
Welcome to the Age of Lions podcast, a platform and community dedicated to bringing purpose, strategy, and calling to kingdom-minded people who are 50 plus and excited about their next chapter. Here's your host, Mark Clement.
Hey everybody, welcome to week number 2 and episode number 6 of the Age of Lions podcast. We are so excited that you're here. I just want to tell you, just give you a quick report. We've had an incredible first week. We launched last week. We dropped 5 episodes at once, if you're wondering why we're at episode 6 already. And the response has been unbelievable. We have gotten feedback at every turn, text and DMs and in-person conversations. I was in a coffee shop last week and a guy came all the way across the coffee shop, recognized me, and was just encouraging me about what the topic means to him and how it's ministering to him. We've had listeners, I had one send a text with a picture shot, a camera shot of a whiteboard. It's kind of his daily kind of thing, his mantras and the things he's kind of repeating to himself and declarations he's making. And he had a quote from one of the episodes on the whiteboard. He wanted me to see it from one of our guests that says something that really impacted him. We were having breakfast with a couple, some really good friends of ours from Oklahoma, and they were quoting episodes back to us over the table at lunch. It's just amazing how God uses things, and I'm so excited to bring you some incredible guests, people who can really impact you and share some amazing things. And today is absolutely no exception. In fact, it just gets better. Today, our guest, you heard him at the top of the podcast, that clip from him. His name is Shawn Lovejoy. Shawn is a great friend of mine and my wife's. He and his wife, Tricia. I've known Shawn for 20 years now, which is crazy to think about. He was a church planter in North Georgia in a town called Cumming, which is like a suburb of Atlanta, and grew that church. God used him in a powerful way to reach thousands and thousands of people in that area. And then he had a successful transition out of that church, which was an amazing thing to watch. And he came back to Birmingham, where we both now live. And Shawn has a company called Courage to Lead, and it's exactly what the name says. He helps leaders get the courage they need to make incredible decisions, do amazing things. He's a wonderful coach and has a whole team of coaches, and is just doing an incredible job. Works a lot with high-level executives and pastors and leaders of churches and ministries and nonprofits. He's just an amazing guy, and I wanted him on here. He's on my list from the get-go because I knew he would have some amazing things to say, and as you just heard, it's going to be a great episode. So we're going to get to that in just a second. Before we do, I just want to give you something to think about, and that is the fact that as I was getting ready to do this podcast and studying this topic and becoming more and more educated on our population and aging and all the trends and things that are happening, I found out that a full third, over 100 million people in the U.S., in America, are 50 or above. And that really shocked me. I didn't realize it was that high. I would have thought it would have been bigger on the younger side. But think about that the next time you feel like you're alone, or you feel like you can't do the thing God's calling you to do, or you just feel like, how could he possibly use me? I just want you to know you're part of literally 100 plus million people in this country who are your age, who are going through the same things. And hey, even if you can't touch all those on this podcast, on this platform, we are your community. We are here for you. We are going through the same things you're going through. We're trying to figure it out. And we're realizing, hey, we've got some incredible opportunity in our 50s, our 60s, our 70s to have some of the best, most impactful decades of our life. And we're trying to figure out how to make that happen. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today with Shawn. We have an incredible conversation today about taking risk, about stepping out in faith, about how God meets us in risk, how he's attracted to risk, and how if we don't do that, the gravitational pull to just be the same, to just stay with the familiar, to just kind of keep going as is, status quo, and nothing really happens, nothing new happens, nothing great happens. It's so easy to go there, but if we will be willing to step out, if we'll be willing to seek out what is our purpose, what does God have for me, what's He calling me to do, and we're willing to step out and pursue it, He will meet you there, and great things can happen. Shawn has lived that out. He and I have gone through that together with so many steps of life, and I can just tell you right now, it's the way God works. It's an amazing thing to watch. So sit back and relax and get ready for an awesome conversation with Shawn Lovejoy. What's up, Shawn Lovejoy? How you doing, man?
Hey, great to be with you, my friend.
It is so good to see you. I've been looking forward to this for several weeks. When I started this, started dreaming about this whole platform and this podcast, you were always on my list, one of my first guests. So I'm excited to have you on here, man.
If I'm on Mark Clement's list, I feel successful.
You and I both.
If it's the right kind of list, I guess.
Right. Yeah, there are some bad lists, but you're not on that.
Right.
Not right now, anyway.
I think I'm on your good list.
You are, man.
That's
you
great,
have
man.
been, what I love about you, and there's a lot of things I love about you, but, even though we've never lived close to each, I mean, we're in the same town now, but like we're still in different parts of town, and we've never been close physically. Like we don't get to spend a lot of time together, but whenever we do, it is always meaningful. It's always deep. Well, not always, but I mean, it always has the potential to go deep. You ask the right questions. You're a great listener. I just feel like you're one of those friends that, even though we don't get to spend a lot of time together, I know I could call you at 2 a.m. at any point if I ever needed you. And also the iron sharpening iron thing, man. You've just always been a good piece of iron for me.
It's good. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I received that compliment in Jesus' name.
Yeah, man. It's one of those long relationships we've had. You meet a lot of people through your life, and they come and go, and they're great. But you're one of those people that just, I can't get rid of you.
That's right, man. It's so amazing. We have to
just
pay attention
always
to what
there.
God's doing here. 20 years, we can't get away from each other.
I know. And there's a lot of history. We almost worked
know.
together a couple times. My wife
Yeah.
almost worked with you one
Yeah.
time.
I forget about that sometimes, but you're right.
I know. And your daughter worked, and I worked at Highlands College together, and like all these crossovers. So anyway, man, good to see you. So, hey, we're going to talk about getting older. And I like to ask people when we kick this thing off, at what point did you sort of have that aha moment, that realization of I'm older than I like to think I am. I'm kind of moving into the second half. Was it a conversation you had? Was it a physical thing that happened? Like what's kind of your story about when you sort of realized, hey, I'm kind of moving that direction?
Yeah, so my story's a little bit unique. My mother died on her 40th birthday.
Wow.
I don't know if you
I
remember
didn't
that
know
or
that.
not.
I knew she was younger, but I didn't know how young. Yeah.
She passed on. She wanted to make it to 40. She had cancer.
Oh, man.
And I was 16 years old. My sister was 14. Difficult. It's a threshold.
Talk about a marking moment.
Still to this day in my testimony.
Mm.
And I know now she was probably the spiritual leader of our home. She
Yeah.
led me to the Lord. She discipled me. She kicked my butt. She was the first person to challenge me to speak in public in the 7th grade.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And she pushed me to do it. She was the one that pushed me to do things. And so when I began to look at turning 40, so I was presented with mortality at an early age. I realized you're not promised forever. Nobody,
right.
So I grew up as a teenager realizing you're not promised to live a long time.
Mm.
I lived with that awareness even as a teenager. And then as I approached 40 years old, I remember saying, my mother maybe seemed old at the time. Now I've outlived my mother. So I'm living on like borrowed time in some way.
Yeah.
So there was like a new urgency for me to like make my life count. I realized how much my mother made a difference from 0 to 40.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, have I made that kind of difference? And, whatever. Of course, it was a premature death, and young age, my parents were very connected, but the funeral home was so full, they had to park people in the Walmart parking lot across the street. And I remember growing up, it's like, I want my funeral to be like that.
Yeah.
So that's a unique take on it, probably more morbid than you wanted to go in the first question. But as soon as I turned 40, I'm like, and then I started having some of the same, like I think I have the same intestinal system my mother had, and I've been out in front of it and tried to live super clean and healthy.
Yeah.
I don't want to get cancer. I don't want to cut my life short. So my late 30s, I started paying a lot of closer attention to what I put in my body and all of that because of what I saw with my mother.
Yeah. I remember when you became a vegetarian. Is that the right word for you?
I was a cold hard vegan for 10 years.
Vegan. Okay.
And then I added fish to it about 3 years ago.
Which makes you what, a pescatarian? Is that what they call it?
I'm a pescatarian that doesn't do dairy. So you can't easily label me. And of course, I like that.
You don't hate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't put Shawn Lovejoy in a box.
That's right.
Okay, I remember when you made that pivot, and I didn't know that backstory. That's really fascinating. So you definitely have a different perspective than most people of always having that. When did you start to feel older yourself? Like when you had that kind of realization, okay, I'm not as young as I like to think I am. Was there a moment, a conversation, a thing that happened? Like when did that kind of happen for you?
Yeah, for me, it started with diet. Early on, I could eat whatever I wanted to get away with it. And even in my late 30s, earlier than most, like I started recognizing like stuff doesn't agree with me, and I've got acid reflux. I started losing my voice when I was a megachurch pastor, and I thought it was just overuse. And it turns out I had acid reflux backing up on my vocal cords.
Yeah.
Frying my vocal cords. And I'm like, I got to change my life.
Yeah.
I can't get away with what I used to get away with. And so I started making adjustments along the way.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here, and you've already addressed this a little bit, but when I think about you, you're one of the most intentional, strategic, purposeful people that I know. Like you check all those boxes. And so you already mentioned this a little bit, but you obviously have made intentional decisions so far, but as you're now even starting to move into later decades of your life, how are you thinking about the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years? And what are you doing besides the eating? What are you doing to stay mentally sharp, to live your best life, keep getting better, growing? Like what kind of strategy are you implementing right now for all that?
Yeah. So one, I think it's important not to stick your head in the sand about mortality. I was just messaging a mentor of mine, 71 years old, this morning, does coaching in the marketplace and ministry like I do, and just found out he got cancer, and just realizing, wow, I'm 54, could that happen to me in the next 15 years? I had a couple of friends drop dead of a heart attack this year.
Yeah.
And I out of nowhere, and like, I just pause and rest in that for a moment. Like, okay, it's another reminder. Okay, we're not promised forever. Life is but a vapor. And so I want to make every day count, and I want to make sure I don't build everything around me. I worked real hard when I was a pastor. Now I'm working real hard as a CEO to not, build all of Courage to Lead around me, and so that it doesn't die with me, and so I sort of live and breathe and think about death a lot, Mark. I know that's morbid, but I think I have the most positive view about it. I'm like, God didn't make any promises. It's but a vapor, and carpe diem, and seize the day. And I want to be prepared when my number's up. And if it's tomorrow or 20 years, and I don't want to do anything that will short circuit it. That's my, like, if I get it, I'm fine. If I get cancer, I'm okay with that. I'll accept that. I just don't want to have regret.
Yeah.
That if I would have, could have, should have, stewarded my body better, I might not be in this predicament.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned this a second ago, but you weren't in your 50s when you did this, but you had a really successful career, prior to the one that you're in now. That's, when I first met you, you were planning a church, and it was growing like crazy, and there in North Georgia, and just a very successful career there. How long were you at Mountain Lake?
17 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought, 17. I don't know where I got that number, but that's what I was thinking. So a long tenure, and, most people, I think, outside of just a dramatic intervention from the Lord, they would have just kept on that path, and, you built this kingdom, so to speak, and you were successful and had everything going for you. What led you to pivot in such a dramatic way, to leave something that not only you led for a long time, but you started, founded, built, and then you pivot into this completely different career of coaching and so forth. What was that transition like for you? What led you to do that? And what was your thought process when you went through that?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, it has everything to do with what we began talking about. When I'm 45 and I hand off my mega church, I was like, "God, he was so young," but I'd already outlived my mother by half decade. So to me, like I recognize like the urgency of making my 40s count.
Yeah.
I'm driven by that in the most positive way. And somehow, some way, maybe mom sees me and she's proud. But secondly, I'm not a big fan of spiritual gift inventory tests. I think they more bubble up and they're recognized and ratified by the body of Christ. That's why we ordain people. So I feel called to ministry. Well, we'll decide, son, if we think you're called and gifted to be a pastor. I do think there's needs to be more of that. And I recognize over time, like I'm a pretty good pastor. I'm an okay preacher. But like when I teach on leadership and when I sit around, in coffee shops and conference tables, like I make people better. I make people a lot better. And so over time, you realize I'm not as good as I thought about at some things. I'm better at some things than what I thought about, and so you begin to really lean into, what I call your superpower. To me, like the day you discover your real superpower, like your number one spiritual gift, the one thing that builds up the body better than anything else, when you discover that, it's powerful. So then you got to ruthlessly kind of get rid of everything else. You can't be a professional athlete at 5 sports. You got to hone that and even grow in your superpower. You got to wake up every day thinking about it. You got to focus on it. And so I began to do that, and so the succession went a little faster than what I thought. I said when I started the church, I'd hand it off when I was 55. That felt really, really old. And I ended up doing it when I was 45, but that didn't seem all that young to me because of what I'd experienced with my mother.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such a game changer from it sounds like you just, everything goes through that filter for you. Like you can't, it's just part of who you are. Like you just can't look at things without factoring that in every time.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying about the superpower. I think you and I are a lot alike in that way of, for me, it's been an ongoing journey of elimination, and I'm good at a lot of things. I can do a lot of things, but trying to find that one or two things that are like my biggest main things is, it's been a challenge in the sense of it's hard to let go of, sometimes hard to let go of good for the sake of the great, and sometimes the great isn't quite great until you let the good go. And then this other good can become great. What do you think it's the thing with your mom that makes you so good at being able to just cut that stuff off and go? Or is it something you've learned?
No, I think it's spiritual, Mark. I really do. And I'm the last one to like over spiritualize things, but I do believe it's spiritual, and I'll explain. Okay.
Yeah.
Most common command in the Bible is do not be afraid. 300 or 400 times, depending on translation. Do not be afraid. Do not be terrified. Do not be dismayed. Do not be discouraged. Have courage. All that. I named the organization Courage to Lead. It literally takes courage to lead. And then Paul said, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, sound mind. So if God is not the author of fear, if fear doesn't come from God, where does fear come from?
Yeah.
100% from the enemy.
Yeah.
So he wants to steal, kill, and destroy your purpose, your confidence, and taking new ground by leaving you in the land of the familiar. It's what he did to the Israelites. It's one of the oldest strategies in the game, and so I think, courage and boldness, it's not a feeling. It shouldn't be. It's a spiritual decision. I am not going back. I am not turning around. I am not clinging to what's comfortable. I will not make this my identity.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I was able to, seamlessly move from megachurch pastor to coach and CEO is like, pastor was never my identity. You know, my identity is Shawn, you know, who has gifts, and some people like it. Some people don't like it. Some people don't think I'm great. But I tell people, Mark, you can diss me, you can doubt me. Don't get in my way. Like I'm on a mission, and God called me to do it. He appointed me, you know? And so for me, that's a spiritual enterprise, because you do have people that doubt you.
Sure.
You do have people that dismiss you. You do get rejected, you know, all that kind of, you have cynics. Everybody has haters, but like for me, it's a spiritual enterprise. Like, no, I know who I am, and I know who called me, and I know who gifted me. And that's where my confidence comes from, to roll the dice, you know, to risk. And I don't over mysticize like what God calls us to do for a living, for our vocation. I think a lot of times he says, why don't you just pick? As long as you're using your gift and it's building up the body, I don't care what you, you know, where your paycheck comes from, you know. So that's how it's a spiritual enterprise for me, to answer your question.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you use the word risk, because I was going to ask you this, and I don't have to now because you said this, but what I was going to ask you next, based on what you were saying, is, okay, that's all great. And I agree with that 1,000%, but kind of playing devil's advocate, so to speak, the question would have been, what do you say to well-meaning people? And I mean, well-meaning Christian, Bible-believing, God-fearing people who say, yeah, but got to take care of your family. You got to make sure you do this. Don't risk too much. Like, and you kind of answered that question. I really believe that God is attracted to risk. I think all through the Bible, you've got opportunities or stories of people who he has asked to step out or do something or do whatever. And when it's like, he's like, I've told you to do this. I'm out here waiting on you. The second you come out, I'm going to meet you in that risk. But until then, we don't really have a lot to talk about, because I've told you what's next for you. And I think so many people get stuck there, Peter in the boat, so to speak. Jesus is out here on the waves going, hey, come out, join me. Like, it's awesome out here. And they're afraid to get out of that boat because of that fear. And I think as people get older, that probably gets harder, just because they feel like they have more to lose. You think that's true?
I think that's part of it, but I also don't, I think we don't start planning for the future. Well, there's so much we could talk about here. I don't think we start planning for the future early enough. And I don't think we have a wide enough portfolio. Let me explain. Okay. So first of all, the words faith, stepping out on faith, what a lot of people call stepping out on faith, is really what the Bible describes as foolish. If you don't have a plan, it's not stepping out on faith. It's actually foolishness. That's what Proverbs says. You know? So I started a church and left real estate, moved to Atlanta, started a church in my living room. People thought that was crazy. Well, it wasn't. I mean, I raised my salary and another staff person's full-time salary for 3 years. I told my wife, so worst case scenario, I got to go get a job 3 years from now. If this doesn't go well, you know, by the time I stepped away from being a megachurch pastor, I had a database of 20,000 candidates. You know, I got contracts with 3 organizations that would basically make up my income for the next 2 years as scaffolds that could fall off. And once again, so I had a plan, you know, so
Gotcha.
I do think stepping out on faith requires a plan. You know, what is your strategy? And then I think most people, Christians are the worst of this. We don't diversify our portfolio. And by that, I mean, like, we shouldn't put all of our eggs in one basket. We should, I've always had a side hustle.
Yeah.
I've always had 2 or 3 avenues of income. One, it keeps you from getting your identity extrapolated into one. 2, it allows you a safe lily pad always to jump over to. You know, as you know, in these days, I'm kind of a real estate developer, you know, on the side. That's my hobby that makes money, you know, these days. But I always want to diversify my portfolio. And of course, I talk to leaders every day in the marketplace and the ministry. I've talked to a couple this week that are 60 years old, and they're like, when should I start thinking about my next step? I'm like, 7 years ago, today, yesterday. Like, you should be thinking about diverse. And I'm teaching my grown children this. Like, don't just go out and get a job and make somebody else money. You probably need to do that. I call it paying rent, paying your dues, whatever.
Sure.
Be your own boss. Have a side hustle. Get permission in advance to diversify your portfolio, because you'll have something one day to potentially leap off into. I wish they taught this class to us,
Yeah, it's so true. And, it's interesting. It feels like the younger generations now, your kids, my kids, etc., having a side hustle is pretty standard fare. It's part of the culture
common
now.
It's more common.
More
of course,
common,
it's not what formal education is teaching. Don't get me
No,
started.
that's true.
Yeah,
but it is in the zeitgeist. It is, it's in the culture. But I do think for our generation, it's less so, only because not as much as our parents, but we're kind of in that middle ground where we kind of have the identity thing.
I agree.
Is key.
No, I agree. Yeah. More prevalent with our generation.
To not have diversity, to not have a side hustle is what's my one thing. And I do think identity is a big piece of that. I think you're nailing that right on the head. I think people get tied into a title or tied into an organization or a position, and they're not thinking that way. But yeah, that's definitely an ongoing problem. And I think too, for older people, when they feel like they're called to do something, take a risk, to use our language, and then the time for the planning comes, or to execute the plan, like you're saying. I had a coach one time tell me, and this was such great advice. I got into a program. A coach is a year-long coaching thing, and I was on the receiving end of it. And most everybody in the program was in their 20s. And at the time, I was probably about 35 or 40. And I remember the guy leading the program. He told me, he said, you got accepted into this program, and your thing is great, and we're excited about it. He said, but the biggest challenge you're going to have at your age, and again, this was 40, not 56, was, he said, you've already been successful. You've already become like the guy. You're the leader in your space, whatever. He said, you're going to have to learn to be 25 again and learn what it means to go ask for help, to go ask for favors, to go ask for volunteers, to ask for money, whatever the thing was. And that was such great advice at the time, because I remember thinking that's a mindset thing, because pride is going to want to keep me from building that plan out. And it's the same thing, I think, when you're talking about raising your salary or asking for a few familiar clients, to say, hey, would you be willing to kind of partner with me for a couple of years to help me get out of the gate? I'm obviously going to give you great value. But you still had to kind of ask for that. You weren't, you were. And so that takes a lot of, not just faith in God, but a lack of what I would call that toxic pride of like, well, I don't want to ask for help, or I'm going to be worried what they're going to think of me, or if I start something new. Talk about that a little bit, because that mindset, I think, especially as we get older, it gets harder and harder for people to break out of that.
Well, I talk about this in my book, Be Mean, about the vision. The first thing you've got to nail down, that seems like so simple, but I don't know that I could overstate it, is you've got to make sure that you believe 1,000% that the vision is from God, that the vision's from God. I have to believe the vision's from God. All right. Now, the next step is then, if I'm 1,000% convinced the vision is from God, the word sin means to miss the mark.
That's right.
So if I don't do it, if I don't follow through, or if I quit on it before God's completed it and what he wanted to accomplish, that's the essence of sin in my life. I've got to feel that kind of spiritual mandate, because it's going to be dissed. It's going to be doubted. It's going to be rejected. I'm going to doubt myself. I'm going to want to quit on a lot of days, but if I am able to always go back and say, well, wait a minute though, it's kind of like getting married. The best way to, stay married is take divorce off the table. You're like, I can't not do this, and I can't quit on it, because I have a spiritual mandate. I know that I know on this day, God called me. You know what I'm saying? I was with Brad Lomenick a couple months back, and he said, you just don't tell Shawn Lovejoy what he can't do. And I was like, that's one of the best compliments I've ever been paid, Brad. I said, because you're right, because Brad Lomenick didn't call me. Nobody else called me. I know who called me, and I'm able to go back and tap into that. And when you nail that down, it's a confidence that it can't be compared. It cannot be compared. It's not arrogance.
Sure.
I call it, holy swagger. You know,
Yeah.
it gives you a holy swagger regardless of public opinion and raised eyebrows and people thinking you're crazy. Man, I handed off my church to do this. People thought I was crazy.
Sure.
Leaving real estate, 6-figure income, my 20s, start a church in my living room. Crazy. You know what I'm saying? Try to scale one-on-one coaching. People said I was crazy. Could not be done. You know.
Yeah.
But I believe 1,000%, man, this is what God's nudging me to do. And you're just able to go back and tap it. I tap into it every day. Yeah. And you have to tap into it, if we're honest, every day. You know, I have my time with the Lord every day, not to check off a list, because I have to go tap back into the well again. That's how I do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much power in that too, of like, I was telling a couple of college students the other day that I get to kind of speak into their life a little bit. And one of the funnest things about that, or most fun things about that, is kind of calling out stuff that you see, you know, in those younger people. And I was talking to both of these guys about, you know, what I see God leading them to do, the ability and the gifts I see in him. But I told them, like, you got to walk. There's a mantle on you that you have to carry, but there's a confidence that comes with that if you'll embrace it. And first and foremost, always remember, it's not about you. It's not because you're so special, but you are in a privileged, honored position because he's given you something he hasn't given to everybody for whatever reason. He's trusted you with this thing. And so every second that you're not operating in that giftedness, that you're not developing that giftedness, growing it, sharpening it, using it, I didn't use the word sin, but that's you're actually, I mean, that's not to put too blunt of a point on it. That's exactly what it is when you're being disobedient. But what I said to them was, you know, that delayed obedience is disobedience. If you're not moving when he says move, if you're not doing the thing that he's calling you to do when he calls you to do it, you are in disobedience. So same thing. And I think people get stuck so much where they have an idea, they have an opportunity, someone invites them into something, and man, that fear just grips them. I was in a room the other day with some, I guess this has become part of what I say a lot. I was with younger people. It's almost always, they're almost always younger. And I didn't know them, and we were having the conversations. What do you do? And, you know, da-da-da. And I was talking to them about, they knew me from the college. And so they were asking me, what are you doing now? And I was telling them. And this one girl was like, how do you do that? I'm like, you just do it. Like, you just, when you know it's time and you know God's telling you to do something, you just step out and you do it. I
call it getting over yourself. You know, I mean, you kind of have to get over yourself. Well, what if I fail and what if I'm not? You know, it's what Moses had to do when he's having that. God's like, get over yourself, Moses. Quit putting all these limitations on yourself. I am is enough. Right. Go. You know, that's a spiritual enterprise, but it's super, super powerful. Yeah. You know, and its ability to help us. Have you heard of the book 5-Second Rule?
I don't know that I have.
It's written by a lady. She's not a believer, but she cites, the reason why I like the book is it cites psychological scientific research.
Okay.
When you have an idea for change or to innovate or behavioral nudge, whatever that might be, decision you need to make, if you don't pull the trigger within 5 seconds, your body naturally will do everything it can to talk you out of it, to keep you in your current state.
Right.
And so the impetus of the book is like, you pull the trigger in 5 seconds. Pull the trigger in 5 seconds. And my general observation, Mark, I don't know that you and I have ever talked about this, but because I've been formally coaching organizations for over 2 decades.
Yeah.
Stuck or fast growing organizations don't make better decisions than stuck organizations. Fast growing leaders don't make better decisions than stuck leaders. They just make decisions.
Yeah.
All the stuck leaders I know, paralysis by analysis.
Oh yeah.
All the stuck organizations I know, paralysis by analysis. I became friends with David Green over at Hobby Lobby. Mm-hmm. And I asked him about a decision making. And he said, Shawn, he said, I'm at best, in 100% of my decisions, I'm at best 50% certain of being right.
Right.
Think about that. He said, in 100% of my decisions, I'm at best 50% certain of success. I'm like, wow. He's like, but they don't pay me to be right, actually, but they pay me to make decisions. And it was a great reminder, and of course, time of this recording, I laugh because regardless of political persuasion, you got our current president, Trump, and Elon Musk. They're both billionaires. In the first 100 days of Trump's presidency, they accidentally fire 2,000 of the wrong people. And they acknowledge it. They accidentally fired 2,000 people. But just like a billionaire would think, they're like, no big deal. We'll just hire them back. Right. If you and I accidentally fired one person, like it would ruin us for the rest of our lives. But a billionaire's like, no big deal. We can redo it. We can recover from it. Yeah. It's okay. We'll just make another decision and we'll just course correct. That's how, regardless of what you think, that's how billionaires think.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. We've been talking about that a lot over the last 100 days of the new president, just because I don't agree with every single thing that they're doing, but the general idea.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Just getting
there's a lot I don't agree with.
I'm just happy they're doing anything. Just get it done. Get something done.
And he will make a lot of bad decisions, and he'll probably acknowledge some of them, not all of them, but
sure.
But that's fast growing leaders. They are decisive. All the stuck people I know, every time I talk to them, they're still wrestling with the same decision.
Right.
They're just stuck.
Yeah. And who is it that talks about failing fast? I can't remember where that came from, but
I don't know, but I like the term.
Yeah. Just if you're going to, 50%, if you're going to fail 50%, just go ahead and get it done. And then, that's not the right direction.
And you learn in the process, right. And the next time you make the decision a little bit differently, it's a little bit more informed, a little more pain attached to it, because you learned in the process.
Oh, that's sure. And, as we get older too, like I've got a buddy who's recently taken a job at a church, and he's sort of a B-level acquaintance. So like we know each other pretty well, but I wasn't going to be necessarily one of the people he called up front to say, what do you think about this? But the second I heard that he took this position, I was like, this is going to be a mess. And it was only because it wasn't about him, but it was just because I've been there. I've seen that. All the signs are there. This isn't going to work. God, outside of a miracle of God, this whole thing's going to turn into a mess. He's going to leave upset, and it's just not going to happen because I've failed there. I've seen that. I've seen other guys fail, and you learn those lessons. And so you start to recognize, okay, I don't have all the answers, but I at least know that's not the direction to go. I know you and I are both coaches. So I tell people the value of coaching is that you potentially get to skip over another leader's pain. Yeah. That's so good. You potentially you make, not only does coaching give you permission to pull the trigger and make the decision. I was wrestling with hiring my daughter. About this. I remember that. Okay. Yeah. I'm losing sleep over it. You know what I'm saying? I go talk to one of my mentors, coaches, Sam Chan, and he goes, we were having dinner, and he said, did you spend 24 years training her? Oh, that's good. So yeah, he said, do you speak truth to her? Does she have permission to speak truth to you? So yeah. He said, well, why would you waste that talent and give it to somebody else? In 60 seconds, it changed the trajectory of our lives and unlocked my decision to make a very scary decision. But I made it better, and we had probably a layer of discussions we'd probably never had I not processed that through with another people. So it gave me permission, and it gave me perspective, and unlocked my ability, to make decisions. And so, how do you let go? Like process it through success is found in many counselors, Proverbs says. And if 5 people tell you it's a bad idea, it's probably a bad idea, But if 4 out of 5 says, you know what? I think you're made for this. I think you're ready for this, but here's something you ought to consider, blah, blah, blah. I'm not only going to have more permission to pull the trigger because I bounced it off several people and there's a common thread there, but they've given me some things to consider. So there's a reason why, I've never hit a wall, never had a train wreck. It's not because I'm that wise. I've walked with the wise. Right. I've walked with the wise, and I've benefited from it over and over and over again. So this is a good segue. I wanted to talk to you about this. You and I both, like you said, we do a lot of coaching. I know that you, especially now with your Courage to Lead, a lot of the people that you're leading, because you're leading you're leading or coaching very high level leaders. So those tend to be older people who've risen through the ranks or had a lot of success. So guys like us, guys 50 plus, et cetera, are probably a big part of your client base. So what are you seeing when you look at that group as a whole over the last 15 years, or however long you've been coaching specifically now? What do you think are some of the main issues you see those older guys or older women or older people dealing with that you just kind of see over and over again? What are some of the big issues in that age group?
So I'll tell you what comes to mind, and this statement alone will probably be worth some listener to the podcast checking in. Okay. So my observation, again, having done this for 2 decades, is I was wrong in my first inclination of successful people. People have broken through 7, 8, 9, 10 figure businesses. Because I would have thought that the more they grew and matured and broke through more zeros, more nickels and noses, that they would become a more secure leader over time. Mm. My observation is actually exactly the opposite. The larger the organization has grown, the more insecure they've tended to become. That's why you can't equate your self-worth with your financial statement, your net worth, your size of your business, how many campuses of your church you got, what, all that kind of stuff, because it's a shallow identity, and you tend to feel less secure. It's like you said, you got more to lose. Mm. You have, generally speaking, more followers on social media. You have more staff, more families to feed, bigger family, and you feel like the weight of the world's on your shoulders. And so that you tend to become more insecure over time. So you got to fight against that so you don't lose your swagger, and you start playing it safe because it's deep change or it's slow death. They call it the organizational life cycle, birth, acceleration, plateau, decline, death. I call it the death cycle. It's claimed great victims, a lot of victims in the past, and we're all on that chart somewhere.
Yeah.
So if we stop risking, we're going to plateau, we're going to decline, and we're going to die. Churches, companies, leaders, marriages, all that. So we have to fight against the plateau by continuing to take new steps of faith, new risks, pulling the trigger, making decisions, being decisive, over time. The second thing I would say is that most guys that we work with, they have a superpower. They already know their superpower, but they have some blind spots and their weaknesses. And probably the only point at which I disagree with John Maxwell, and if you spoke with him off stage, behind stage, he would say, we need to flesh that out and I need to explain it better. But he says, just focus on your strengths. I don't think that's adequate.
Okay. Say
because
more about that.
I've never had a leader say to me, what took me down was my strengths. What took them down was an underdeveloped area. It was a blind spot, an unseen area that they didn't get, or it was a known weak spot that they were too prideful or too busy to slow down long enough to get some help.
Yeah.
From somebody that could help them. And I'm talking about a therapy, counselor, but also a coach. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the guys we work with in the marketplace, for example, like they're either good at technology or they're good at sales or, they're good at strategy or whatever, but they lack sometimes the team leadership aspect. Nobody ever taught them how to lead a good meeting. They lead very bad meetings, for example. They don't do performance reviews. They're not super honest, all that. So we can shore up and help them where they're really weak. A lot of pastors are really good at preaching, or they're really good at caring for people, but they don't know how to recruit and lead and develop a team and reproduce themselves in other people and blah, blah, blah. So I think it's important to recognize, hey, what's my superpower? But what am I not good at? What do I suck at? what are my blind spots? What are the things I'm a little bit, I know I'm not good. I'm not going to slow down and mess with that. I'm just going to, do my thing. I like this over here. I think where we need coaching and therapy is in the unseen areas because it can bite. Of course, we see it bite people every day in the ministry and the marketplace because they didn't pay attention to those areas of weakness.
Yeah. That's so good. As you transition into this role of coach and mentor, and you were obviously not this age when you started it, like you said, 20 years ago. But as you've grown in that, as you've gotten older yourself, and I would venture to say, just knowing you, and really it'd be true for anybody, you're carrying more authority now than you did 20 years ago. You've got more experience. You've led more people. You've coached more people. As you transition more and more into that sort of that older sage or that guy that people are coming to for advice.
Yeah.
What are the pros and cons for you of transitioning into that space or being that guy? What have you had to give up to do that? What have you gained by doing that? And let me just be clear, just because we're getting older doesn't mean we get to do that. It's a gift that you've earned and you've leaned into as you've gotten older. It goes with age typically, but there's more to it than that. So it's not automatic, but you've done the work and you're there. So what are the pros of that? What are the cons of that? What's that transition been like for you?
So I think even a watching world, pagan, okay, they reward consistency. They call it the Sports Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame. You don't get in there from having one great year winning a Super Bowl.
That's a good point.
Like you get in that, you don't hit one number one song and get in the Music Hall of Fame. It's they're looking at the whole of your trajectory. And by the way, every single one of them had good years and had bad years. You don't even know this about me. Okay. You'll love this. You know what I listen to in all your older people are going to love me more after I make this statement to you. My favorite music artist of all time. Do you know who it is?
I don't.
Frank Sinatra.
Okay.
All right. I listen to Frank Sinatra every day in my car on Sirius XM. Seriously, Sinatra. And I'm not a paid endorser. Channel 71.
Seriously.
But he had about a decade of his career that was in the trash.
Yeah.
And then he got a movie role and rebounded, but the world calls him the king, and Elvis. Right. Elvis had some tough years and bad years too. But over time, so what I'm saying to you is my goal is just to be consistent over time. Yeah. I'm going to have some ups. I'm going to have some downs. I'm going to have good years and bad years. And, but over a long period of time playing the infinite game, I think the world rewards consistency. And I think people look at Shawn Lovejoy today and they're like, some people don't love me as much as others. What they say, man, Shawn's sort of been who he's been, you know what to expect from Shawn Lovejoy, over time. And I think, sooner or later, the market recognizes that.
Yeah. They
reward, consistency. So don't be all over the place. Don't chase the shiny thing, be consistent, run in a lane and demonstrate a consistent voice in a space over a long period of time. And you've heard it said, most overnight successes took 10 or 20 years in the making. Sure.
Yeah. We don't know those stories.
Yeah. And I think that drills down on like a very personal level. Like if I stay married, if I maintain a healthy relationship with my kids and it looks like my coaches respect me and admire me and my team and, watching world says, oh, you know what? There's something positive happening there.
Yeah. You can't argue with the fruit.
Yeah. It's like a testimony that you're always building a positive legacy, hopefully, right. that you're always building. It gives you a motivation for make sure you maintain that.
Yeah, for sure. The last thing I always ask everybody is, I have found, and this to be true, that we've even referred to it today, that people who are successful long-term, consistent over time, doing well in their older years, they're growing and they're learning. So who are you learning from right now? Who's sort of ahead of you maybe an age down the road that is really speaking into your life, and what are you learning from them?
I've never been good enough just to have one mentor or one coach, you know. I have a spiritual mentor. I have a spiritual coach. I have a leadership coach. I have a business coach. I have a family coach. All that I can call and dial, you know. I've talked to my business coach today and helped me process through a thing that is, you know, that's an opportunity that's out there in the future for us. And he just clarified everything in a matter of seconds, you know. And you know, I've got a spiritual coach that I text back and forth with every day or every other day. You know, my family coach, somebody I really look up to, that's run a really good race, you know. And so I'm constantly tapped into 4 or 5 people in my life. And I've really always kind of done it that way. You know, when I was a pastor, I had a generosity coach, you know, and I had an organizational coach, somebody who was bigger church than mine. You know what I'm saying? And I had a leadership coach. You know, I built Courage to Lead on the template of John Maxwell's former right-hand guy, Dan Ryland. You know, he taught me how to set the whole thing up, you know, from the beginning. So I always have 4 or 5 people I'm tapping into at a time. And I'll say this is true. I found this true in others. Like every coaching relationship tends to have a runway. You know, you're not with, you're gonna run with a coach for a season. You're gonna learn most of what you can learn from them. And if you've done it right, you kind of meet up with them and become peers with them.
Yeah.
You know, I've got guys that I coached now have become coaches with me and they're peer to peer. You know, and I've caught up with some other people. And so they don't need me anymore to be their coach. So I was just say, if you're in a coaching relationship mentoring relationship with somebody that's getting tired, pay attention to that.
Sure.
Because if you stop learning, you stop growing, you know, and always be looking for the next relationship that can teach you something that you don't know and help you see something you've never seen before, you know, in yourself, etc. So that's how I approach it.
What are you consistently learning though from those coaches? Like what are a couple big takeaways that have benefited you as a 50-something-year-old guy?
I mean, really everything we've talked about today. I mean, that be decisive, you know, be courageous, go for it. You know, that's what I hear most often from my guys. I mean, most coaching conversations I've gone into with these guys, I go on my tail between my legs, you know, and I've never walked out of one of those conversations like that. That's the value of coaching. You know, you come out inspired, you come out informed, you know, you come out persuaded, and I am with every single one of those. You know, that they inform my decisions and make them better. And they've talked me out of some bad stuff, just like, you know, you pictured earlier. So I have failed a lot, and everything I've done that's genius is genius by mistake. but it's paying off, you know, in the long run. It's paying off, and I'm getting better. You know, just watch me. I'm getting better
over time.
That's what I want to do over the next 15 years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, I appreciate your time today. The whole idea here is that we just want people who are in that 50 plus range, 50, 60, 70s, whatever it is, that they are, whatever they're dealing with, whatever they're facing, however they're feeling, that hopefully they can watch or listen to this episode and the other episodes and just be encouraged to know that they're not alone, to know that anything's possible, to know that God has more for them. And I mean, I think what you've shared today is so helpful because you've said, hey, this isn't random. You know, there's a method. Get a coach, get a mentor, do the work, make a decision, step out. Like, it's very clear cut. There are things that can be done. And that's what I want people to take away is there's something I can do. It's not just a bunch of information, but here's some practical next steps that I can do to get better. And what I want to do is I'm going to put all your company information in the show notes. If anybody wants to reach out to you guys for business coaching, leadership coaching. Shawn is definitely one of the best at that. And especially as a kingdom-minded person, he gets it and knows what it's all about, has been super obvious today. So, buddy, I appreciate you. I love you. Appreciate your time,
man. Love you too. Honor to be with you
fun.
today and cheering for you, man. Excited to see
Thank you,
what
man.
God's doing with you.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate it. Hey, I tried to tell you up front that was going to be an incredible conversation, and it was. Shawn does not disappoint. He brought it. He has some great things to say, and I hope you were taking notes. And if you weren't, I encourage you to go back through and listen to that again and really pay attention to some of the things he talks about. His whole story about how his mom died at such a young age is really incredible. How that really set him up for a really different perspective going through his life, and how it's helped him have a sense of urgency. It's helped him think about how short life is, how precious the time is with family and with the thing God's called you to do and the ministry he might have put on your heart or the business idea or whatever it might be. It's time to get busy. It's time to go. And that was an amazing thing to hear about. And then just his life experience of taking those risks, doing the homework, doing the legwork, raising the money, doing the things that he had to do to make stuff happen, and just saying, hey, God's called me to do this. I'm going to trust him. I'm going to step out of faith. It was an amazing thing to listen to. So I hope you got a lot out of it. I know I did. Amazing conversation with Shawn Lovejoy. Hey, next week's going to be no exception. I'm so excited about our guest next week. Make sure you tune in for Sarah Hadgraft. Sarah and her husband George are great friends of Agenda and mine. And Sarah is an exceptional therapist and counselor, has an incredible practice here in Birmingham called Sparrow Counseling. And she's helped so many families, marriages, parents, and kids. She just does an amazing job and has learned so much through her practice and has some incredible insights to share. So I want to encourage you to tune in next week for Sarah. It's going to be an amazing interview. And hey, before we go, I just want to remind you, you can find us on all the podcast platforms. You can watch on YouTube if you're not already doing that. I was actually shocked to find out how many people watch on YouTube. We actually had more watchers that way than we had listeners on the audio. That was amazing. Incredible to see. So make sure you check all that out, and whatever platform you're on, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever it is, if you'll do us a favor and rate the podcast, give it stars or whatever the thing is asking for, whatever you feel like it needs or deserves. The ratings really help us to rise in the ranks of being referred. The keywords work better. People can find us easier. And then feel free to like the episodes or rate the episodes as well. Subscribe to the channels. Anything like that you can do really helps the podcast grow. And we would really be grateful and really appreciate anything you can do to help us. Thank you so much for being here. Can't wait to see you next week with Sarah Hadgraft. Have a great week.